The cafe pulsed with the low hum of conversation and the clatter of ceramic on saucers, a symphony I'd come to associate with pure, unadulterated happiness. My happiness, specifically. Liam across from me, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he laughed at something I'd said about my disastrous attempt at baking sourdough, was the conductor of that symphony. He had this way of making even my most mundane failures feel endearing, a charming quirk rather than a sign of my culinary ineptitude. We'd been together for just over a year, and every day felt like unwrapping a new, perfectly chosen gift. He was a designer, always sketching in a small notebook he carried, his fingers long and agile, stained perpetually with ink. I, a librarian, found comfort in the quiet order of books, but Liam had introduced a vibrant chaos into my life, painting it with bolder strokes and brighter colors. He remembered my favorite obscure teas, the way I liked my coffee just a touch sweeter than most, and how a particularly stressful day at work could always be remedied by a long walk through the botanical gardens, hand in hand. We had our rituals: Saturday morning cafe dates, Tuesday night movie marathons with questionable popcorn toppings, and Sunday afternoons spent exploring hidden antique shops. It was in one of those shops, amidst the scent of aged paper and forgotten lives, that he'd bought me a tarnished silver locket, promising to fill it with a memory we'd make together. I wore it every day, its cool weight a constant, comforting presence against my skin. Life felt settled. Not in a stagnant way, but in the comforting embrace of a well-loved armchair. Our evenings were filled with easy silences, shared jokes, and the quiet rhythm of our breathing as we fell asleep. He'd often trace patterns on my back until I drifted off, his touch a gentle reassurance that I was loved, truly loved. We talked about everything: our dreams, our fears, the ridiculousness of bureaucracy, the beauty of a perfectly composed photograph. Or, at least, I thought we did. I shared my vulnerabilities, the anxieties that sometimes gnawed at the edges of my otherwise peaceful existence. He listened with an intensity that made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. I remember one evening, curled up on his sofa, the city lights a blurred backdrop through the window, I confessed my deepest fear: being invisible, unremarkable, easily forgotten. He pulled me closer, his voice a low rumble against my ear. "Elara, you are anything but invisible. You shine. You illuminate everything around you." His words had resonated deep within me, silencing the persistent whisper of self-doubt. He made me believe I was extraordinary, even though I knew, intellectually, that I was just me. Ordinary Elara, with her penchant for quiet corners and dusty tomes. But with Liam, I felt extraordinary. That was the magic of him. He saw something in me that no one else ever had, or at least, that no one else had ever bothered to articulate. The first crack in our seemingly perfect facade was almost imperceptible, like a hairline fracture in a priceless vase. It was a Tuesday, our usual movie night. I'd picked out an obscure black and white film from the 40s, something I knew he'd usually appreciate for its cinematography. He arrived late, his usual bright energy replaced by a subdued tension. His phone, which was usually left casually on the coffee table, was tucked away in his pocket, almost defensively. "Rough day?" I'd asked, trying to keep my voice light, offering him a bowl of popcorn. He'd mumbled something about a demanding client, a last-minute design change. His eyes, usually so expressive, seemed distant, preoccupied. He barely touched the popcorn, and through the entire film, I felt his attention was elsewhere, a phantom presence beside me rather than the warm, engaged man I knew. When I leaned my head on his shoulder, as was our custom, he tensed slightly before relaxing into the embrace. It was such a subtle shift, but I felt it, like a tuning fork vibrating just slightly off-key. I brushed it off, of course. We all have bad days. He was probably just tired. Overwhelmed. His work could be incredibly demanding, and he often worked long hours, fueled by strong coffee and an almost obsessive dedication to his craft. But the subtle shifts continued. He started staying later at work more often, always with a plausible explanation. His phone became a constant companion, face down on tables, buzzing with notifications he'd glance at quickly before dismissing. He'd occasionally get calls he'd take in the other room, his voice hushed. When I'd ask who it was, he'd offer vague answers, just a colleague, someone from the studio. Nothing concrete. My librarian's mind, accustomed to cataloging and cross-referencing, started to notice the inconsistencies, the missing pieces in the narrative. He'd forget small details about our conversations, things we'd discussed just days before. He'd been planning a surprise weekend trip for us, something he'd been incredibly excited about, but now when I mentioned it, he'd simply nod, a little blankly, as if I'd brought up a new topic entirely. The locket, which I still wore every day, felt heavier, almost accusatory. The memory we were supposed to make felt increasingly elusive. I found myself watching him, analyzing his every movement, every flicker of emotion on his face, trying to piece together the puzzle of his sudden detachment. The man I loved was still there, physically, but something essential felt like it was slipping away, like sand through my fingers. The confusion gnawed at me, a persistent ache just beneath my ribs. I tried to talk to him, gently, carefully. One evening, as we were washing dishes, another one of our shared rituals, a quiet moment of domesticity, I broached the subject. "Liam," I began, scrubbing at a stubborn spot on a plate, "is everything all right? You've seemed a little distant lately." He paused, the sponge still in his hand, and turned to face me. His expression was carefully neutral. "What do you mean, Elara?" "I'm fine. Just stressed with work, you know how it gets." He offered a small, strained smile. I wanted to believe him, desperately. But his eyes, which usually held such warmth for me, were opaque, unreadable. "It's just, you seem preoccupied. And you've been working so much more. Are you sure you're not overdoing it?" I pressed, trying to keep my voice even, non-accusatory. He sighed, a faint impatience in the sound. "Look, I told you, it's just work. Big project. Deadlines. It'll pass." He turned back to the sink, effectively ending the conversation. I felt a chill despite the warm water on my hands. This wasn't the open, communicative Liam I knew. This was a man building walls, brick by careful brick, around himself. The next few weeks were a painful dance of avoidance and quiet desperation on my part. He continued to be elusive, his explanations becoming increasingly vague and less convincing. He started spending nights away, sometimes 2 or 3 in a row, citing client emergencies or design charrettes that required him to be on site around the clock. My calls would often go to voicemail, and texts would be answered hours later, if at all, with terse, uninformative replies. My imagination, usually a source of comfort and storytelling, turned against me, painting unsettling scenarios in the quiet hours of the night. Was he sick? Was he struggling with something he couldn't share? Or was it something far worse, something that would shatter the beautiful world we had built together? The thought, once unthinkable, now crept in, insidious and cold. I found myself walking past his studio building on my lunch breaks, a pathetic attempt to catch a glimpse of him, to confirm his stories, to reassure myself that my fears were unfounded. Each time, I saw nothing amiss, just the usual comings and goings of creative professionals. The locket felt like a lead weight now, a symbol of a promise that felt increasingly broken. The air in my apartment felt heavy, suffocating. It was a Saturday, the day we usually spent exploring antique shops or lingering over coffee. Today, Liam was out of town for a design conference. A conference I hadn't known about until 2 days before, when he'd casually mentioned he'd be gone for the weekend. The suddenness had left me reeling. As I tried to distract myself with a book, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from our shared photo album, a cloud-based folder where we stored all our memories. A new photo had been uploaded. My heart skipped a beat, a surge of irrational hope that he'd sent me a picture from his conference, a sign he was thinking of me. But the image that loaded shattered that hope into a million jagged pieces. It was a selfie, taken in a sun-drenched park, somewhere I vaguely recognized but couldn't place immediately. And in the picture, beaming beside Liam, her head resting on his shoulder, was a woman. Young, beautiful, with striking red hair and eyes that sparkled with a joy that mirrored Liam's own. They looked intimate. More than intimate. They looked like a couple. My breath hitched. The world tilted on its axis. I zoomed in, my fingers trembling. Her hand was intertwined with his. On her left ring finger, a delicate silver ring. My locket, the one he'd given me, suddenly felt scalding hot against my skin. I scrolled back through the album, my mind racing, a terrible dawning realization washing over me. This wasn't a new upload. It was an old one. From months ago. Before the rough day, before the demanding clients, before the design charrettes. My blood ran cold as I scrolled further. More pictures. Picnic in a field of sunflowers. A cozy dinner at a restaurant I'd never been to. A New Year's Eve kiss, fireworks exploding in the background. My New Year's Eve with him had been quiet, just the two of us, watching a movie. No fireworks. The dates on the photos told a brutal story. His double life wasn't new. It was a carefully constructed, months-long deception. The sheer scale of the betrayal hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. The confusion dissipated, replaced by a searing, white-hot hurt that quickly curdled into something colder, sharper. He hadn't just been distant, he had been living a lie, weaving a tangled web around me while I, naive and trusting, had been completely oblivious. The photos were a punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for air in the quiet solitude of my apartment. My hand shook so violently I could barely hold the phone. I kept scrolling, my eyes blurring with tears, but a perverse need to see the full extent of his deception propelled me forward. There were dozens of them, chronicling a parallel life, a vibrant, happy relationship that mirrored ours in so many sickening ways. Weekend getaways. Holiday celebrations. Intimate moments captured in time. They had even adopted a rescue dog together, a scruffy terrier mix, something Liam had always said he wanted but we'd never gotten around to. The dog had its own series of adorable photos, proving this wasn't a fleeting affair, but a deeply entrenched, domestic partnership. Each picture was a shard of glass, tearing at my already raw heart. The public humiliation, the sheer audacity of him sharing these moments in a shared album, twisted a knife in the wound. He hadn't even bothered to hide it properly, or perhaps he was just sloppy, arrogant in his deceit. The thought that he thought so little of me, so little of our relationship, to be so careless, ignited a spark of something fierce within me. It wasn't just hurt anymore, it was outrage. A burning, righteous indignation that refused to be extinguished. I stared at the locket, still clutched in my hand, its silver dulled and lifeless in the dim light. It felt like a mockery, a symbol of everything he had promised and subsequently destroyed. The memory we were supposed to make together, he had made with someone else. And then another thought, even more chilling, seeped into my consciousness. The public exposure. What if someone else, someone we both knew, had seen this album? What if they already knew? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. My meticulously ordered world, my quiet, predictable life, had been shattered by a man I thought I knew, a man who had expertly spun a web of lies around me. I felt like a fool, utterly and completely humiliated. My tears, which had been flowing freely, suddenly stopped. A cold resolve began to settle over me, hardening the edges of my pain. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about him. About the lies. About the woman he was deceiving, just as he had deceived me. And a quiet, powerful voice deep within me whispered, he would pay. The rage simmered, a low, constant burn beneath my skin. I spent the rest of the weekend in a fog, the images of Liam and the red-haired woman replaying relentlessly in my mind. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, trapping me with my own shattered illusions. By Monday morning, a plan, vague but insistent, began to form. I needed more information. I needed to understand the full extent of his betrayal, to uncover every thread of his double life. My librarian skills, honed by years of meticulous research, suddenly found a new, darker purpose. I started with the obvious, the red-haired woman. Her face was clear in many of the photos. A reverse image search yielded nothing immediate, but one photo, taken in what looked like a pottery studio, gave me a clue. A small, distinctive logo on a nearby shelf. I typed it into a search engine. Clay and Kiln Studio, Community Workshops. The location was a neighborhood across town, one Liam often claimed he was working late in for various projects. My heart pounded as I cross-referenced the studio's open hours with Liam's alleged work schedule. It fit too perfectly. The next step was harder, more intrusive, but my resolve had hardened into steel. I needed access to his phone, his laptop. I knew his passwords, we'd never had secrets before. The thought of invading his privacy, even after his monumental betrayal, still made my stomach churn, but the need for answers was stronger. I waited for him to return from his conference. He called me Monday evening, his voice cheerful, almost artificially so. "Hey, Elara. Just got back. Long flight. So exhausted." The casual deception, the smooth delivery, made my blood run cold. He was still playing the part, still expecting me to be the trusting, naive girlfriend. I feigned sympathy, played along with his charade. "Oh, poor you. Get some rest. Maybe we can catch up tomorrow?" I suggested, my voice betraying none of the turmoil raging within me. "Sounds good," he said, and I heard the faint echo of another voice in the background, a woman's laugh, quickly muffled. My grip on the phone tightened. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, the truth would begin to unravel, brick by painful brick. Tuesday arrived, a blur of nervous anticipation and simmering anger. Liam called, as promised, suggesting dinner at our favorite Italian place. "I've missed you, Elara," he said, his voice a practiced bomb. I almost laughed. The audacity. But I kept my voice light, agreeable. "I've missed you too, Liam." "Sounds lovely." My stomach churned. This would be my chance. I knew he was particular about leaving his phone unattended when he charged it, always within arm's reach. But his laptop, he often left on the kitchen counter when he came over, connected to his portable hard drive for design work. I arrived at his apartment a little earlier than planned, feigning eagerness. "I just couldn't wait," I chirped, giving him a quick, chaste kiss on the cheek. He seemed pleased, almost relieved. As he went to shower, humming a cheerful tune, I moved quickly. His laptop was indeed on the counter, lid closed. I opened it, my fingers flying over the keyboard, entering his password. The screen flickered to life, revealing his familiar desktop. My hands were shaking as I navigated through his files. His design folders were meticulously organized, as expected. But then I found it, a hidden folder, buried deep within a seemingly innocuous Client Archives directory. Its name was simply E. I clicked, and a flood of documents, photos, and videos appeared. Photos of the red-haired woman, her name, I now knew from a cached browser tab, was Evangeline. Pictures of them on trips abroad, intimate moments in their shared apartment, yes, their shared apartment, confirmed by lease documents and utility bills I quickly skimmed. The dates stretched back almost 2 years, predating our relationship by several months. He had met me, fallen for me, while he was already deeply involved with someone else. My mind reeled. It wasn't a double life he'd started recently, it was two separate, concurrent lives, painstakingly maintained. I found a string of emails, sweet, affectionate exchanges between him and Evangeline, discussing their future, their plans for a family, their dream home. He had told her he loved her. He had told me he loved me. The words, identical in sentiment, felt like acid in my mouth. My eyes landed on a detailed financial spreadsheet, outlining shared expenses, savings goals for a house, even a joint retirement fund. He was building a life, a future, with her. A future he had also implicitly promised me. The depth of his deception was a physical blow. I leaned against the kitchen counter, the cold formica doing little to ground me. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the Liam I knew with the meticulous deceiver I was uncovering. He hadn't just been seeing someone else, he had been building an entire, fully fleshed out life with another woman, complete with shared finances, future plans, and a rescue dog named Buster. The sweet emails, the promises of forever, they were carbon copies of the ones he'd sent me, the whispers he'd breathed into my ear. My humiliation was absolute, but it was overshadowed by a chilling clarity. This wasn't a mistake, a moment of weakness. This was calculated, sustained manipulation. He was a master of performance, a chameleon, effortlessly shifting between two distinct realities. And I, Elara, the meticulous librarian, who prided herself on seeing patterns, on discerning truth from fiction, had been his perfect mark. The thought was unbearable. A notification popped up on his laptop screen, a text message from Evangeline. "Can't wait for you to get home, my love. Buster misses you terribly. Dinner's in the oven." My stomach clenched. My love. He was on his way to me, planning to share an intimate dinner, while his other life, his real life, waited for him. This was the moment. I had to decide. Confront him now, unravel everything in a storm of tears and accusations? Or use this painful knowledge, this quiet power, to my advantage? The image of him, laughing in the park with Evangeline, the locket burning a hole in my heart, solidified my choice. Tears wouldn't be enough. He needed to feel a fraction of the humiliation, the betrayal, the public exposure that I had endured. But I needed to be strategic. I needed to ensure my own escape, my own future, was secure before I detonated the bomb. I quickly copied all the relevant files, the photos, the emails, the financial documents, onto a small, encrypted USB drive I always carried with me for work. Then, I deleted his search history, closed the hidden folder, and placed the laptop back exactly as I found it. The sound of the shower turning off jolted me. He would be out in minutes. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and prepared to play my part. The game, I realized with a chilling calm, had just begun. Dinner at the Italian restaurant was a surreal experience. Liam was charming, attentive, and utterly convincing in his performance as the doting boyfriend. He asked about my day, listened intently as I recounted a particularly challenging patron at the library, and even brought up the surprise weekend trip, saying he was so sorry for the delay and that he was working on something special. Each word was a dagger, twisting deeper into my already wounded heart. I smiled, nodded, played along, a puppet on his strings. Inside, I was a maelstrom of emotions, rage, disgust, a profound sense of emptiness. He ordered my favorite pasta dish, remembered I liked extra Parmesan, and held my hand across the table, his thumb tracing slow circles on my skin. His touch, once a source of comfort, now felt like a violation. I forced myself to eat, to engage in polite conversation, to maintain the facade. Every fiber of my being screamed to expose him right there, to shatter his meticulously crafted illusion in front of the other diners. But I held back. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect. As we walked back to my apartment, the cool night air doing little to soothe my burning skin, he started talking about our future. "I've been thinking, Elara," he began, his voice soft, intimate, about finding a place together. Something with a little garden for you, maybe a dedicated studio space for me. My blood ran cold. The sheer audacity. He was simultaneously building a life with Evangeline and plotting a future with me. The gall, the callousness, was breathtaking. "That sounds wonderful, Liam," I managed, my voice a thin thread of control. He squeezed my hand, seemingly pleased with my response. We reached my building, and he pulled me into a hug, pressing a lingering kiss to my forehead. "I really missed you, my love," he whispered. My love. The same words he'd texted to Evangeline. I fought the urge to recoil, to push him away. Instead, I tightened my arms around him, a silent promise of retribution forming in my mind. "Me too," I lied, my voice thick with unshed tears. He finally left, and the moment the door clicked shut, I stumbled back, gasping for air. The performance was exhausting, soul-destroying. But it was necessary. I had to be strong. I had to be smarter. The next few days were a blur of meticulous planning. I called in sick to work, feigning a sudden, debilitating flu. My real work, however, had just begun. The USB drive held the keys to his undoing. I pored over the documents, cross-referencing dates, addresses, and names. Evangeline's social media profiles were public, a goldmine of information. She was a kindergarten teacher, her feed filled with cheerful photos of her students, craft projects, and, of course, Buster the Terrier. Her parents were tagged in several photos, their names and a vague location noted. This wasn't just a casual fling, this was a woman deeply invested, genuinely in love, and completely unaware of the monstrous lie she was living. My heart ached for her, a sudden, unexpected surge of empathy overriding my own pain. She was a victim, just like me. My revenge wouldn't be against her, it would be for her, too. For both of us. I started building a timeline, a damning dossier of his deceit. Every lie, every missed date, every flimsy excuse now clicked into place, illuminated by the harsh light of truth. The client emergencies were weekends with Evangeline. The design charettes were dinners with her parents. The long hours at the studio were spent in her apartment. The sheer brazenness of it all was staggering. He had managed to keep two lives completely separate, two women completely in the dark, for almost 2 years. It was a terrifying display of manipulation, a testament to his pathological ability to deceive. My initial thought of a public confrontation at our favorite cafe or a dramatic exposé in front of his colleagues felt too impulsive, too chaotic. I needed something precise, something that would hit him where it hurt the most, his carefully constructed reputation, his illusion of control. And it had to be undeniable. It had to be undeniable to everyone, especially Evangeline. The quiet power I sought wouldn't come from a shouted accusation, but from a meticulously delivered truth. The annual design gala was a highlight of the city's creative calendar, a glittering affair where Liam, as a rising star in the design world, always shone brightest. It was held in the grand ballroom of the old Astoria Hotel, a place steeped in history and opulence. This was where he would be exposed. This was where his carefully constructed world would crumble. I had received my invitation weeks ago, as his plus one, of course. He had even helped me pick out a dress, a simple but elegant emerald green gown that he said made my eyes sparkle. The irony was not lost on me. I spent the days leading up to the gala in a detached haze, going through the motions of my librarian duties, my mind consumed by the impending confrontation. I refined my plan, rehearsing my words, anticipating his reactions. I wanted to be prepared for every eventuality, every possible deflection. The day of the gala arrived, crisp and clear. I spent hours meticulously getting ready, not for him, but for myself. I styled my hair, applied my makeup with a steady hand, and slipped into the emerald dress. It felt like armor. As I fastened the locket around my neck, its weight a familiar comfort, I felt a surge of cold determination. This was it. I arrived at the Astoria a little late, deliberately, wanting to make an entrance, to ensure I had his full, undivided attention. The ballroom was a dazzling spectacle of lights, music, and elegant attire. Liam spotted me almost immediately, his face lighting up with his practiced, charming smile. He made his way through the crowd, greeting me with a kiss on the cheek, his arm slipping around my waist. "You look stunning, Elara," he whispered, his eyes lingering on my dress. I smiled, a tight, controlled smile. "Thank you, Liam." "You too." My gaze swept the room, searching. And then I saw her. Evangeline. She was standing near the buffet table, talking to a group of people, her red hair a fiery beacon in the crowd. She looked radiant, oblivious, her hand resting affectionately on the arm of a tall, distinguished-looking man, her father, I recognized from the photos. This was going to hurt, for all of us. But it had to be done. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the elegant waltz music that filled the ballroom. I kept my arm linked with Liam's, forcing myself to maintain the illusion of affection, of normalcy. His hand rested possessively on the small of my back as he introduced me to various colleagues, his voice smooth and confident. "And this is Elara, my wonderful girlfriend." Each utterance of the word felt like a lie, a poison I had to swallow. I smiled, nodded, made polite conversation, all while my eyes darted around, locating Evangeline, calculating my approach. She was still with her family, laughing, completely at ease. My gaze flickered to Liam's face. He was beaming, playing the role of the devoted boyfriend to perfection. The anger flared within me, hot and sharp. How could he? How could he stand here, so casually, so brazenly, living this lie? Finally, I saw my chance. Evangeline's father excused himself to get a drink. "Oh, Liam," I said, my voice carefully modulated to sound sweet and slightly conspiratorial, "I just saw someone I know, a colleague from the library. I'll be right back." I squeezed his arm, a gesture of affection that was actually a silent promise of destruction. Before he could respond, I gracefully detached myself and started weaving through the crowd, heading directly for Evangeline. She looked up as I approached, a polite, inquisitive smile on her face. Her eyes, those beautiful, expressive eyes from the photos, were filled with a genuine warmth that made my heart ache. "Hi," I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging within me. "I'm Elara. I think we know someone in common." Her brow furrowed, a slight confusion clouding her features. This was it. The moment of truth. My hand instinctively went to the locket, its familiar weight a strange comfort. Evangeline's smile wavered, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "Oh? And who might that be?" she asked, her voice pleasant, unsuspecting. My gaze lingered on her hand, where the silver ring glinted. The same ring I'd seen in the photographs. My voice, surprisingly calm, held a steely edge. "Liam," I said, letting the name hang in the air between us. Her eyes widened, a dawning realization slowly replacing the pleasant inquiry. Her breath hitched. I watched her closely, every subtle shift in her expression. The initial surprise gave way to a flicker of fear, then dawning comprehension, and finally, a slow, terrible understanding. "Liam, your boyfriend," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the crowd. "My fiancé, actually," she corrected herself, her eyes darting nervously towards where Liam was still chatting animatedly with his colleagues. The word fiancé hit me like a physical blow, a fresh wave of nausea. He hadn't just been playing a double life, he'd been planning a wedding. My carefully constructed composure threatened to crack. But I held it together. This wasn't about me breaking down. This was about exposing him. "I'm afraid there's been a terrible misunderstanding," I continued, my voice low but clear. Ensuring only she could hear me. I pulled out my phone, navigating to the shared photo album, the one he had so carelessly uploaded his double life into. I turned the screen towards her, displaying the first image of Liam and me, smiling, arm in arm. My name is Elara. I'd been Liam's girlfriend for over a year. We met at the public library he was designing a new wing for. And he gave me this locket, I said, touching the silver pendant at my throat, my voice infused with a quiet despair. Her eyes, wide with disbelief and horror, scanned the photos, her face draining of color with each scroll. The joyful images of her and Liam, side by side, looked like cruel taunts now. The public exposure was beginning. Not loud, not dramatic, but devastatingly personal. Evangeline's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Her eyes, once so bright, filled with a raw, agonizing pain that mirrored my own. She looked from the phone in my hand, displaying the undeniable evidence of Liam's betrayal, to me, then back to the photos. No, she whispered, shaking her head, a desperate plea for this nightmare to not be real. No, this isn't possible. Her voice was hoarse, choked with disbelief. I felt a surge of profound sadness for her, a fellow victim in his cruel game. I wish it weren't, I said, my voice heavy with empathy. He told me he was at a design conference this weekend. He told me he loved me. He talked about us moving in together, building a future. My gaze drifted to her left hand, where the engagement ring now seemed to mock us both. And it seems he told you something similar, didn't he? Or perhaps, more. She swayed slightly, as if the ground beneath her had shifted. Her eyes, clouded with tears, darted towards Liam, who was still laughing with his colleagues, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing just yards away. The contrast was stark, his carefree enjoyment against her burgeoning despair. He told me he loved me since the day we met. We're planning our wedding, she choked out, her voice barely a whisper. He just bought us a house. We adopted Buster together. The mention of the dog, the little terrier mix from the photos, solidified the reality of his deception for her. The tears started to fall, silent trails down her pale cheeks. The humiliation, the betrayal, it was all laid bare in that moment, between two strangers brought together by one man's monstrous lies. I gently touched her arm, a gesture of solidarity, not pity. I found this album. And other things. Financial documents, emails, he has been living a complete double life. With both of us. The quiet power of the truth, delivered without accusation or melodrama, was more devastating than any shouted rage. Evangeline's eyes, red-rimmed and brimming with tears, met mine. In them, I saw not anger, but a profound, gut-wrenching despair. How could he, she whispered, the question directed at no one, a raw cry of a shattered heart. How could he do this to us? Thus resonated, a shared understanding of our unwitting participation in his elaborate charade. I don't know, I admitted, my voice equally soft. But he can't get away with it. Not anymore. My gaze shifted to Liam, who was now scanning the room, his eyes searching for me. His smile was still in place, the charming facade unblemished. The thought that he could embody such duplicity, such calculated cruelty, sickened me anew. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense, it was about exposing a predator, a man who built his happiness on the ruins of others' trust. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. We need to do this together, I said, my voice firm. He needs to face both of us. Evangeline looked at me, a flicker of bewildered understanding in her tear-filled eyes. Together, she echoed, as if testing the word on her tongue. Yes, I affirmed. So he can't deny it. So he can't twist the story. Before she could fully process my words, Liam spotted me. His smile widened, and he started making his way towards us, his eyes only on me, oblivious to the silent storm brewing with Evangeline at my side. This was it. The moment of reckoning. Evangeline's hand trembled, but she didn't pull away when I gently squeezed her arm. She straightened her shoulders, a newfound resolve hardening her gaze. The hurt was still there, raw and visible, but it was now laced with a quiet strength. The game was over. And Liam, the master manipulator, was about to become the publicly exposed villain of his own twisted narrative. Liam approached, his steps confident, his smile still plastered on his face. "There you are, Elara. I was just wondering where you'd vanished to." He chuckled, a sound that now grated on my ears. His eyes then flickered to Evangeline, and for the first time, I saw a subtle shift in his expression, a momentary flicker of surprise, a slight tightening around his eyes, quickly masked by practiced charm. "And who is this lovely lady?" he asked, extending a hand to Evangeline, his voice smooth as silk. Evangeline's face, still tear-streaked, was a mask of pain and growing anger. She didn't take his hand. Instead, her eyes, filled with a cold fury, locked onto his. "You tell me, Liam," she said, her voice shaking but clear enough to cut through the ambient chatter. "Because I thought I knew you." His smile faltered, a hairline crack appearing in his carefully constructed facade. His gaze darted from her to me, a desperate search for an explanation, a way out. "Evangeline, what are you talking about?" he stammered, his voice losing its usual smooth cadence. I stepped forward, holding up my phone, the screen still displaying the damning photos of him and me. "She's talking about this, Liam," I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. "And she's talking about this," I added, touching the locket at my throat. "The one you gave me, promising to fill it with our memories." Evangeline, with a trembling hand, held up her left hand, revealing the engagement ring. "And she's talking about this, Liam. The ring you gave me. The house we just bought. The wedding we're planning." The silence that followed was deafening, the waltz music suddenly seeming intrusive, mocking. Liam's face, usually so composed, contorted into a mask of pure shock, then a panicked, desperate attempt at denial. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, for a way to salvage his reputation. The crowd, which moments ago had been a blur of polite conversation, began to fall silent, their attention drawn to the dramatic tableau unfolding before them. Heads turned. Whispers started. Liam, trapped between the two women he had so cruelly deceived, looked like a cornered animal. His usual charisma had completely vanished, replaced by a ghastly pallor and a desperate, hunted look in his eyes. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, his voice thin and reedy, devoid of its usual charm. He tried to reach for my arm, then for Evangeline's, as if to physically silence us. We both recoiled. "A misunderstanding?" Evangeline's voice was a sharp, incredulous gasp. "You told me you loved me. You were building a life with me." Her voice rose, raw with emotion, carrying further into the stunned silence of the ballroom. I stepped closer, my voice low but resolute, cutting through his pathetic attempts at denial. "He has a hidden photo album, Evangeline, filled with pictures of us. From our first date, our anniversaries, our life together. It spans over a year." I then turned my gaze directly to Liam, my voice laced with a quiet power. "And he also has financial documents, a joint retirement fund, a lease agreement for an apartment you share. He's been living a meticulously crafted double life, Liam, with both of us completely in the dark." The weight of my words, delivered with calm precision, seemed to crush him. He visibly deflated, his shoulders slumping, his eyes wide with a desperate, trapped fear. His colleagues, who had been watching with growing alarm, now exchanged knowing glances. The Whisper Network, I knew, would be working overtime. His carefully cultivated image, his reputation as a brilliant, trustworthy designer, was shattering into a million pieces around him, exposed for all to see. Poetic justice, indeed. Liam stood frozen, his eyes wide with a combination of terror and defeat. He looked utterly pathetic, stripped bare of his charming facade. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. A wave of hushed whispers and shocked gasps rippling through the ballroom. His colleagues, once so eager to greet him, now pointedly turned away, their faces etched with disgust. He was no longer the rising star, he was the exposed fraud. Evangeline, though still trembling, found a surprising wellspring of strength. She took a step forward, her voice clear and strong despite the tears that still streamed down her face. "You are a monster, Liam," she declared, her voice ringing with a righteous fury that commanded attention. "You manipulated us both. You used our love, our trust, to build your pathetic lies. You deserve nothing." He finally managed to speak, his voice a desperate croak. "Please, Elara, Evangeline, don't do this. Let's talk. This can be explained." His eyes pleaded, darting between us, a desperate attempt to regain control. But there was nothing left to explain, nothing left to salvage. I met his gaze, my own eyes cold and unwavering. "There's nothing to explain, Liam," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. "The truth has been laid bare. You chose this path. You chose to be a liar and a deceiver. And now, you face the consequences." I unclasped the locket from around my neck, its silver suddenly feeling cheap and meaningless. With a decisive movement, I dropped it onto the polished marble floor at his feet. It landed with a faint, hollow clink, a final, definitive sound in the suddenly silent ballroom. "Consider this a permanent severance," I said, my voice resonating with a quiet power I hadn't known I possessed. I turned to Evangeline, offering her a small, knowing smile. She nodded, a silent acknowledgement of shared victory. Together, we turned our backs on him, leaving him standing alone in the center of the rapidly emptying ballroom, his carefully constructed world in ruins, the locket a discarded symbol of his monumental betrayal. My heart, though bruised, felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of his lies. The clarity, the quiet power, had finally arrived.